Hi, everybody. Today is Monday, September 22nd, 2025, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
You haven't kicked me out of the house yet, huh? Not trying to dispossess me, but nice shirt.
You're doing that.
Nice shirt.
You too.
Yeah, I got to tell Professor Miranda he's got to step his game up. He made some crack on one of your recent conversations with him. He's a good man, but he needs to get a shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Please subscribe and hit like button to help us reaching more people. And Larry, let's start with the case of Charlie Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And here is what Fox News told us about the rifle, the type of rifle being used in the assassination.
To get the latest details about that weapon, but investigators had already told us one thing that we knew a few days ago was that they found the rifle out wrapped in a towel right near the shooting scene. So they had it, but what we didn't know was exactly how old it was. And it's important to point that out because police say the suspect might have chosen that gun because it was pretty much untraceable. I want to show it to you on your screen for people watching at home. This is what that weapon looked like according to authorities. It's a Mauser model vintage rifle that investigators say is so old they didn't even have a serial number on it, so they wouldn't have been able to track it down. This is the weapon that police say Tyler Robinson used to assassinate Charlie Kirk that day. It dated back several decades, the gunman calling it Grandpa's rifle, texting his transgender partner after the killing saying this. I want to pull up these text messages because this whole thing had come to light too the other day. I'm worried what my old man would do if I don't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if it has a serial number on it, but it wouldn't trace to me. I'm worried about handprints. I had to leave it in a bush, though, where I changed outfits. I didn't have the ability or time to take it with. And then he actually kind of stayed around the area, we're told, to see if he had the time to get it and take it to his car. Court documents say the Utah State Bureau of Investigations, who's working this case, found DNA from the murder weapon that they believe is consistent with Tyler Robinson. Police say Robinson also admitted in a text message that he shot and killed Kirk, texting back and forth to his partner, kind of giving a lot of information. Back out here live, while Robinson sits in that county jail behind me in Utah, his partner is cooperating with authorities, I'm told. So they're trying to get as much information as they can.
Yeah, you get what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Larry, what do we know about the rifle and how is the information? How do you find the way that they're somehow managing this situation or they're trying to put out information about the case of assassination?
Well, we really don't know much about the rifle. We've got some, I'll call them contrived narratives. There was a photograph that was circulating claiming, oh, this is the rifle they found. But, according to that report, this was a 1906, 1908 Mauser. That's 120 years old. The rifle that they showed didn't look like that at all. It was not a wooden stock. It almost looked like it was some sort of plastic material stock. So, we're not sure. I've heard some of this said that it's an MK98 Mauser. And another friend of mine, Ryan Dawson, had claimed that, oh yeah, that you could collapse that stock, fold it over to reduce the size of the gun. Well, I've been all over scouring the internet for such an image. I can't find it. Shooting an old rifle is, brings some problems with it. I mean, you've got to make sure it's in decent condition and that the barrel hasn't worn out and, a number of other things. I've got a M1 Garand, which was a rifle used in World War II. It's from 1943. And I still, before I ever shot that, had to take it to a gunsmith to say, okay, check, is this safe to fire? Because it fires the round that Charlie did, which is it's a big round. So we really don't know if that in fact is the rifle, and what the condition of it was. Then the question is, the FBI claimed that he broke it down, took it apart, disassembled it in part to get it off the roof. Yet if you disassemble a Mauser, it has what's called an internal magazine. So it's like a spring that if you put in rounds of ammunition, and that spring will push up so that you can then chamber the round into the barrel, or put the round into the barrel so it can be fired. Well, the problem is when you disassemble a Mauser, that when that internal magazine, it drops out and all the ammunition falls out. And yet they claim that they found the rifle intact with the, he'd fired a shot. It's a bolt action. So you raise the bolt, pull it back. It will extract the cartridge, move the bolt forward. It will insert the new cartridge into the barrel. Well, they claimed that after he fired, he didn't operate the bolt action at all, left it intact. So there's no way in hell he could have disassembled it, is the point. Okay. So somebody's lying here. That's what's clear. The images of him going across the roof, it doesn't appear. He has something in his hand, but it doesn't appear to be a full-size Mauser rifle. So to just, you've got to ask the question, why is the FBI lying about this? And then you get to the issue of the shot. The fact that there has been so much disinformation surrounding this tells me that it's an intelligence operation of some sort. In other words, people deliberately feeding false information into the narrative, such as, oh, he was shot from the side. That's why his head his head didn't do that. Or he was shot from behind. Or, so you've got lots of this conspiratorial stuff going on. He was shot from the front. He got shot, right here. Whether it nicked the collarbone and then spun up, but it put a hole in, and the hole initially shows up about the size of the end of your middle finger, but then it rapidly, blood just poured out. The claim that it was a 30-06 round that hit him. I have seen several videos of a variety of 36, full metal jacketed 30-06 rounds. It would have tore his head off if that's what hit him. Or just, would have caused catastrophic damage beyond what we saw in his neck. Because you can see on the internet, they've got what are called ballistic dummies. So they use a gel and they actually have a skeletal structure. So it's designed to reproduce, what shooting an actual person would be like. And when a 30-06 round hits it, now again, when some of these images, we don't know if they were shot from 200 yards. There is a round, it's called frangible, and it's designed that when it penetrates, it then breaks up. It doesn't. It was originally designed to stop. When police were shooting somebody, a bullet would pass through them and hit some innocent bystander behind. So they came up with what's known as a frangible round that would then remain within the body of the person. I suppose that's possible, except then we get this story out that, the doctor found the bullet just under the skin, and they were calling Charlie Kirk Man of Steel, stop the bullet. That's such a crock of crap. Yeah, it's just so you step back and say, why the lies? There's no doubt Charlie was shot from the front. There was not an exit wound. You can see it on a variety of videos. But it raises questions about exactly what size it was. There's some insisting it was what's called a palm pistol. Look, the problem with the palm pistol is, how do you aim it? I can aim and point. I can do pretty accurate point shooting out to about 21 feet. But once you get out past, say, 15 yards, and you try to point shoot, with a handgun, you're going to be not very accurate. This was an accurate shot, So or whoever was aiming, if they're aiming to the head, the bullet could have dropped and hit him in the neck. So the forensic, what I'm saying so far is the forensic evidence just isn't adding up to the narrative. And the FBI's got, I had high hopes that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino would bring some credibility back to the FBI. It turned it into a friggin' clown show. They're both buffoons.
Larry, you've mentioned how the surgeon was talking about the bullet, the Man of Steel, because he could explain what has happened to the bullet, what it didn't, because we've learned from what Candace Owens told us, that she saw a footage from backside. She sees that there is nothing going on when you look at the look at the scene from the back. And why is that the position? You see no blood, you see nothing coming out in that direction.
I've got a video on my latest sonar21.com post that contains several videos within that video of different shots from a 30-06. There's one that uses a full ballistic dummy, head, chest. The shot goes through the chest, blows out the back, so you get an exit wound. So the entrance wound may be like the size of the end of my finger. The exit wound is like this. And there was a 2x4, a piece of wood that was attached to the back of this ballistic dummy. The bullet penetrated the 2x4 and then went back and hit a wall. That's what she was expecting to see, that if a 30-06 round that was fully metal jacketed had hit Charlie in the neck, would have tore his neck off, would have blown off a big back half of his neck, and would have probably hit some of the people that were standing back behind. That's where the story doesn't make sense. Now, maybe they'll come up and say, "Oh, well, it was an underpowered, this was a specially made round of ammunition that only had half the power, half the gunpowder inside the shell casing." Well, maybe. So again, we don't have any. The information they've put out is misleading, and beyond that, we don't have any good information other than to say what we know about the performance and the characteristics of a 30-06 round are not evident in what we see with Charlie Kirk. He gets hit. He does this real quick movement he gets hit from the front. It's the physics of you're hitting low enough on the neck, the head's going to move forward. You hit me in the forehead, my head's going to go back. I mean, you can just do it to yourself with pressure. You hit yourself from the side, But if I hit myself here on the side of the neck, your head does different things. So you need to look carefully at what's going on. But, the fact that he said he found the bullet under the skin, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The other thing is the text messages between Tyler Robinson and his love. The whole thing is so amazing because he's coming. Because the whole story that he comes from a conservative family and then he goes in a relationship with a transgender guy, and the text messages between the two, it seems that two people 50 years ago are talking to each other. It's somehow amazing. Just looking at 22 years old, these are pretty young people talking to each other the way that 50 years ago people were talking to each other.
Yeah, what's his name? Lance Twiggs or something like that. Yeah, there's a real problem with the text messages put out. And number one, they don't have date timestamps. So it's not like they've been lifted off of phone. Some have speculated that this was an AI generated conversation. You know, you went to Grok and say, "Hey, Grok, give me a conversation between, you know, two sexually confused people, one of whom has just killed somebody and has got a rifle he needs to hide," and you know, because some of the language use, you know, you and I talk a lot. You know, we're on. You know, you do a variety of podcasts. I do a variety of podcasts. None of us use language like that. I mean, it's archaic. Some of it is archaic. So you got to wonder why are they so busy in, you know, establishing this narrative? Now, there is other reports out, and again, I take it at face value that it may be true that this thing was planned in advance. You know, there were cars coming and going from that location in the days preceding. There were posts on Discord and other social media platforms saying that something big was going to happen on September 10th, that Charlie, you know, others even say, writing that Charlie Kirk was going to be killed. So this wasn't just one angry, transgender, confused guy who's going out to avenge his boyfriend / girlfriend / whatever. There was an element of organization to this. And, you know, that's what they got to get to the bottom of and explain.
How trained one should be to do such to hit the target the way that he did with assassination?
Well, it means that you either you've had somebody who's taken that rifle and zeroed it so that when you shoot a target at 200 yards, I've heard two different 150, 200 yards. When you shoot a target at that distance, you want to make sure that when you line up the reticles, you know, the crosshairs, that when you put the crosshair on a particular point, that's where the bullet will hit. You know, it's called, because the earth is, you know, curved, when you fire a bullet, it's basically following the curvature of the earth. And over distance, the longer the distance, if you will, the more the bullet drops. So, for example, if I'm shooting a round, and you know, I call them rounds or ammunition, because a bullet is only one part of the round. You've got the bullet, the shell casing, the primer. The primer is like a little explosive at the base in the center of the cartridge. Then when you hit it, it ignites the gunpowder. So you got those four things: the bullet, shell, gunpowder, and primer. When you fire, like, say, a 5.56 round, which is, you know, much smaller, at 500 yards, if you've got it zeroed, so at 100 yards, you'll hit right in the middle of what you're looking at. At 500 yards, that bullet will drop 5 feet. Okay. So what this means is somebody had to have zeroed that rifle so that they knew when they were aiming at 200 yards that it's going to hit either where you're aimed, or you will understand that you need to adjust where you aim at, recognizing that the bullet's going to drop 4 or 5 inches from 200 yards. Okay. Hopefully I'm not confusing you yet.
No.
So that's one aspect, that there had to be somebody, whether that was this Tyler Robinson or somebody that helped him, that zeroed that rifle, number one. Number two, then, is the actual shooting, pressing the trigger. Okay, I can teach you, if I've got a zeroed rifle, I can teach you to do that at 200 yards in probably 15 to 30 minutes. And it's a simple matter of put the rifle down, aim at the target, understand what you're looking at through the scope, put the crosshairs on it, learn to breathe, exhale, hold your breath, press the trigger. If teach you to do that, you could make that shot. So the bottom line is there was an element of skill in here. Plus, this gets back to the whole notion of he disassembled the rifle. If you've got it zeroed in and then you take that rifle apart, there's a good chance that you will have lost the zero, so that you have to shoot again to make sure that where you're aiming, where the red dot in the middle of your scope is, that's where the bullet's going to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally.
Okay.
Yeah. It's amazing the way that you describe it. Larry, here is one of our audience he has a question for you. Please ask Larry, what would happen if the bullet came from the right side around the ear?
Yeah. No, if you would have seen it from the right side, just put your finger to your ear, hit yourself in the ear. Try to see if you can keep your head. If you get hit unexpectedly in the side, your head's going to move like this. Okay? We didn't see that. On the video, his head does this. It goes down and then up. Down and then up. Not to the side. So, that's why I say this. I step back and say, who's putting that out? I mean, I'm not accusing the questioner of that. If that has been circulated on the internet, it's, oh yeah, this is, we think, what happened. Because this was an exit wound. That wasn't an exit wound. That was an entrance wound. You can pull up my video at sonar21.com and look at that and watch the exit wound that comes out of this ballistic dummy. It's like the size of a paper plate, small, a 6-inch hole. So, the what was done to Charlie, it was an assassination. It was intended to kill him, and it did so effectively.
Yeah. The other case, Larry, is with his outfit. Here is what the FBI said.
So when he's first spotted on campus, he has different clothing on, and then he changes clothing on the roof, and then changed back into that clothing at some point, so that when he was apprehended, when he was arrested, the clothing matched the clothing he had on before the shooting.
Yeah.
How do they know he changed his clothing on the roof?
I don't know.
What was he up to, doing a strip tease? Music playing. Is it lots of holes in the story? The FBI. I don't know if it was a deliberate effort to mislead people. That's a possibility, or if they're just sheer incompetence. I never discount the possibility of incompetence and stupidity.
And you see the footage, Larry, of the guy who's crossing the road, that you see he has some sort of problem with his leg, and he doesn't.
Well, that's before, right?
Yeah, before, yeah.
Yeah, before the shooting, he's walking like he's limping. Some have speculated that he's had a rifle in his pants, and I've seen videos where some say you can't do it, and others say I've seen videos where you can do it. You can still walk, but you walk, you will have a limp, or it's not a normal gait. So is that how he smuggled the rifle up? Again, they've got images of him on the stairs. You don't see him moving in any of those images. So you can't tell whether or not he's actually bending his knees. Does he have a rifle hidden in his pants or not? Or they claim, because when this first happened, I assume he had a rifle that he was able to take apart. There are some you can take apart, disassemble, and break them down and get them into a backpack. But then the FBI comes up with the story. There's the 30-06. You really don't break that down easily. I've looked for it, a single video. If someone can find it, please send me a copy of it. I'd like to see it. If someone breaking down a Mauser, it's like I could go bring my M1 Garand in here. It's a World War II vintage rifle like this. Some suggest this may have gone back to World War I, but it's got the receiver, what they call the receiver, and then the stock, the wooden part that the barrel sits in. That doesn't come apart easily. It's not a quick and knock it down. Whereas like with an AR platform, an M4, M16, I just push a little screw, if you will, or bolt, and it can break it down in half right away. I mean, I can do that in 4 seconds, but not this. So
here is, Larry, what Candace Owens said about the outfit.
What happened? Something made its way around the entire town and into my tips line repeatedly. It is a very clear image of Tyler Robinson, allegedly taken, I'll say allegedly for safety here, but it's looking right according to my timeline, allegedly taken at 6:38 p.m. at a nearby Dairy Queen. Here is that photo that we can show you. Just take a look at this photo. What is wrong with this picture? A lot is wrong with this picture. First and foremost, 6:38 p.m., you just shot someone. You have gone through great pains to hide your face, to change your outfit. But wait, you didn't fully change your outfit, did you? I'm looking at this photo, and you're wearing jeans, and you're wearing the maroon shirt. Now we have a 50-50 combo of the outfit, and now you're showing your eyes, and you're not fearful at all that you might be recognized. Also, wow, you must have quite the stomach. You don't have a record. Next thing you know, you shoot someone and you're like, I'm just going to go have a meal. You don't seem to be too shaken or too upset. Something problematic is the location, by the way. We mapped this out. It's about 15 minutes away from the campus at a time when we're told that he's idling by, babysitting the rifle. So you can see, we're showing you it's about a 17-minute drive away from the campus. So there should be a lot of footage then of this Dodge Challenger driving back and forth. Okay. And like I said, the biggest thing that jumps at me is he looks kind of content there. So he's got to be a full-blown psychopath, wearing half of what the feds told us he was wearing in the morning and half of what the feds told us that he was wearing during the shooting. Okay. So why did he text in this exchange at all and say that he changed outfits? When you just said, I changed my t-shirt, if that's the reality, you just changed your t-shirt and that was enough? Was it just a t-shirt that he changed? The outfit, again, as I sensed yesterday, has always been problematic. I feel the outfit was the Fed mistake. It never made any sense to say that he wore an outfit onto campus, light khaki shorts and a maroon shirt, and then decided to completely change hours later. Because why wouldn't you just change the t-shirt? That actually makes more sense. Every kid wears blue jeans. You don't have to change blue jeans or change out of khaki shorts to avoid detection. That's not going to go, hey, we're stopping you because you're wearing blue jeans. That's not a thing. It would make much more sense if he had just changed his t-shirt.
Yeah.
Well, look, there's some problems with what she's saying. 6:38 p.m. was 3 to 4 hours after the shooting. She intimated that this was shortly, 15 minutes after the shooting. No, it wasn't. 6:38 p.m. I think the shots took place around, was it 1 p.m. Out there? So I'm assuming this is all local time to Orem, Utah. So, the fact that he's nonchalant 5 hours later, I don't find that surprising at all. But, she is correct. Why is the FBI making such a big deal about changing out, quote, changing outfits? Look, you and I, we got the shirt thing going on. I've never heard you say, I'm going to go put on my new outfit. Who talks like that? Yeah, I'm going to change my shirt. We're going to change shirts, or, okay, we're going to come in with conservative shirts on Friday. No, we're not. We don't, our outfits. It's just, there's something weird about the language. And, Candace is correct, noting, so you're going to change your t-shirt, change your t-shirt. It's not like the whole thing was a costume, or was it? So, again, this the FBI, with a lot of the things it's saying, is creating just more confusion.
And we had the memorial of Charlie Kirk, in which we saw Tucker Carlson coming up, Donald Trump was talking about, and Donald Trump was asked about actually the assassination. He said that he feels that the assassin was alone and no one else is involved. Here is what he said, Larry.
Well, this is what you're asking. It would look to me like not. Now, he did have a friend, but I don't. The friend seemed to be a little bit surprised.
And here is what Tucker Carlson said at the memorial.
Ultimately, he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about, what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Everything is inverted.
You see two people. One of them is feeling that what has happened to Charlie is deeper than what they're talking about. And Donald Trump is trying to say that this is the only guy who was responsible for the assassination and nothing more than that, beyond that.
Yeah, Trump's reaction to this has been pretty weird. There've been descriptions by Charlie's widow Erica and others that Charlie loved Donald like a father. He was like a second child to Donald Trump. Yet on the video footage that got the part that was used in the show that got Jimmy Kimmel fired, Kimmel I thought he made a decent point, a fair point, about Trump was asked, like the day after Charlie had been murdered, that what's your reaction? And he just said something very, just sort of, oh yeah, it's terrible. Hey man, look at that construction project over here. That's what I said. That's weird. That's not normal. If you really have a relationship with somebody that you genuinely cared about, and they've been murdered in this way, I would find it even difficult to talk, particularly if it's someone that's like my son, someone that I claim to have had this close relationship with. Trump's emotions on this have not been normal. I mean, the emotions don't match the story, I guess is what I'm saying. Hey, man, we're building the biggest ballroom ever. Yeah, Charlie, he's dead, man. God, but man, this ballroom's going to be great. That is, what I'd call a legitimate target for a comedian trying to make a point. That Trump's reaction was just so, so unusual. I'll leave it at that.
Which is not even a little bit comparable with what Netanyahu is trying to do.
Oh my God.
He's so obsessed with everything around it. Donald Trump is trying to ignore everything. And that wasn't a big deal. And how, Larry, when you put these to the reactions coming from Donald Trump to the reactions coming from Netanyahu, why is the prime minister of another country is trying to do everything to convince people that he wasn't behind the assassination, and Donald Trump is somehow ignoring, as you've mentioned, the way that he should address the assassination?
Well, there is the APAC, American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, The various Zionists are working overtime, and it's not just Jewish Zionists; it's Christian Zionists. Charlie was used as a tool by these people, and Charlie, he did accept their money. And there are several instances over, even over the last year or two, where he has said things to justify the genocide. He has not been strong in condemning the murder of children in Gaza. And part of that can be attributed to the the financial pressure that was being brought to bear on him by these wealthy Zionist donors. They realize they have a problem, though, because the conversation that was recorded, I guess, 24 hours before all this happened between Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. And if you take some of the comments out of context, it sounds like Charlie was really questioning and challenging the Israelis' genocide. But if you play the full clip, it's more like he's trying to get some guidance from Ben Shapiro. Hey, help me. How do we explain this to people so that they're not going to be pissed off at Israel? Well, whether both Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson have testified or spoken out that Charlie was under enormous pressure, that he did not like Bibi Netanyahu. He did not like Bibi Netanyahu's interference in American politics, and that he recognized he had a problem with his base of supporters. These 20-year-olds are not buying into the Israel's our best friend narrative. So this, the fact that it surfaced quickly, that the possibility was this Israel trying to shut up Charlie? I don't rule that out at all. As far as not did they set somebody up? Did they help organize the effort? Can't rule it out because they've got a clear track record of killing people that they view as a problem. Just ask Hassan Nasrallah and the Hamas negotiator Hania. So Israel's got just a long, rich, sordid tradition of murdering, assassinating others that they want to get out of the way. So here's Charlie Kirk, who's beginning, the 2 points that he was adamant on was he was going to have Tucker Carlson was his friend, and he was going to have Tucker back at the next Turning Point USA event. Well, that, there's clear evidence, according to Tucker anyway, that these Zionist donors, the very, very, very wealthy, pressured him to say, you don't have Tucker Carlson, don't have Megyn Kelly, and don't have Dave Smith. Well, so, it's a complicated picture from Charlie Kirk's side. There are some who can just take certain statements he made and said he's just a tool of the Israelis. There are other comments you can take and say, no, he was starting to break away. Again, I come back to the fact he's 31 years old. And
so young.
There are things you believe when you're 31, and, you may not have enough experience at that point to, properly think about it and say what you're going to say. I know, boy, I said some stupid stuff I didn't mean to. And people could take comments I said back when I was 30, 31, and if they played them, it would, paint a radically different picture of me. So that's why I say I'm very reserved in any kind of judgmental statements about Charlie Kirk was this or Charlie Kirk was that. I step back and just say, hey, whether he was a tool of Zionists or not, he had the force of personality and the personal vision. And when you listen to Candace Owens, who worked with him in the early days of Turning Point USA, very, very clear that he was a young man with a vision and delivered on it, and he should be commended on that.
Larry, when you interact with the people, it could be on your in your classroom. It could be with the crowd that Charlie Kirk was doing. You try to tell your message and you're getting their message. You're getting influenced by the people you're talking with.
Mhm.
Even when I teach at the in the classroom, I get influenced by my students.
Right.
They teach me as I'm trying to teach them, That's what has happened during this movement in the United States, in my opinion. Charlie Kirk was somehow he learned something new that he couldn't learn it from Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens.
Right.
It came from the young people who were challenging him, who were trying to make a point against him.
Yeah, I wonder.
And
I don't know when did he first do his first "prove me wrong"? When you go to a college campus and say, "Hey, prove me wrong," but it would be a debate, a back and forth, a Socratic questioning. I'm not sure,
yeah.
but I would guess if you went and watched the first 2 or 3 of those that he did, and then you watched what he did 8 years later. Let's assume that he started when he was 23. I think you'd see a difference, a change in approach, change in argument, a change. Um, he's been accused of saying some harsh things, but again, in those videos that I've watched of those interactions, he was never insulting or calling people names, using expletives, insulting their mother's sexual history. None of that. It was always back and forth, asking a question, posing a question.
That's why I don't think that the Israeli government would be able to reshape the movement that he has started, because the movement is coming from these young people. It's not about Charlie and his people. It comes from the young people in the United States, mostly under the age of 30.
Yeah.
And that could not be changed, as I understand it. Larry, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think the Turning Point USA is they're at a point of we'll see how they continue. I don't know what percentage of their budget has been supplied by wealthy Jewish donors like Bill Ackman and others, but if they find money outside of that, if you will, non-Zionist money, and then continue this movement, because it is trying to challenge this sort of traditional. I don't even like calling it leftist, but it's they are challenging the notion that they start from the premise America is a good place, not a bad place. And again, that's the discussion I would love to have had with someone like Charlie, to say, hey, I agree that within America there has always been this hope, this ideal of goodness, but we got to take responsibility for our evil, for what we've done and what we're doing. I mean, look at right now, Donald Trump is murdering people in boats off the coast of the Dominican Republic and off the coast of Venezuela with no proof, no evidence, no actual due process under our Constitution. He just decided, I think they're bad. Someone's told me they're bad. I'm going to kill them. That's legalized murder. That's all it is. So we've got these bad things in America. The sort of the other thing that that they emphasize is that, and this is where it gets really interesting. Charlie Kirk's emphasizing a Christian faith, yet the Zionists reject Christianity, and particularly in the more, I'm told, I have not read the actual passages in the Talmud, but people say that within the Talmud, which is commentary by Jewish rabbis, that there are scathing, disgusting things said about Jesus and about the Virgin Mary. So, the irony of Zionist money funding a movement that is primarily Christian, promoting a Christian message and repentance and come to Jesus, that at some point becomes maybe a point of contention.
Larry, don't you think that this rhetoric about the left and the right is somehow much more confusing, that
Yes.
we are not addressing the core issue, which to me, the left is the socialism, the employee, employer, and the social security, these things, the left. They were always asking for these sort of qualities to be considered, but you don't see that much of it, because the left is somehow, they're talking about some other things, the right, they're talking about some other thing that we don't recognize it as the right.
Yeah.
And the traditions, all the right is about, and it's somehow they're confusing the whole battle. I was watching the Candace Owens podcast. She said, and Tucker Carlson as well, said that the battle is between the elites and the people. It's not the battle between the right and left.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It is like, for example, I believe that government should not be out attacking, killing foreigners, attacking other countries engaged in military operations on their own initiative. I believe that military force should always be used as defense, that you've been attacked or you are being threatened with an imminent attack at which your life will be lost or that of your citizens, and that you have no alternative but to use force. Yeah, then use force. Same thing that applies, when I teach defense, people to protect themselves with a firearm. If you carry a gun and somebody confronts you, the first thing you need to try to do is to de-escalate that, not fight them, not escalate it by calling them names or hurling insults or imposing tariffs or doing some, action that will harm them. Try to de-escalate, try to get away, get out of the situation. It's only if that after everything, if you can't get away, you can't de-escalate, then the person is got a weapon in hand and they're threatening to kill you, that they're moving towards you. Yeah, then you use force. You take them out. But that's the last resort. So because I take that position, does that make me conservative or liberal? Does that make me right or left? Beats the hell out of me. Or the concept that, hey, I don't want government taking money that I make so it can waste it on some other programs. I would like there to be some accountability, some fiscal responsibility. I'm willing to pay my part to be a member of society, but I don't want to have to pay more than other people. And if you're fabulously wealthy, maybe you could step up a little bit and help contribute to society. Does that make me left or right? So we just go down sort of issue by issue. I'm just me. I tend to lean more in the whole libertarian direction. Minimal government, maximum responsibility for individuals, and hold people accountable for what they do.
The other day, I don't know if you saw Pam Bondi talking about the hate speech and the freedom of speech, and the same thing was happening with the previous administration. They're using the same sort of rhetoric to go after their political rivals.
Right. Yeah, that's the danger. I mean, she was, and the good news is that people like Tucker and Candace spoke out immediately condemning her. She's awful. She should be fired. It shows she doesn't have an understanding of the Constitution, certainly doesn't understand the concept of free speech. I'm old enough to remember, you weren't, you may not even have been born yet, when there were a group of neo-Nazis that marched in a area of Illinois, Skokie, Illinois, outside of Chicago, where there was a large Jewish population, a number of Holocaust survivors. and they ultimately they were allowed to march. You know, I oppose everything they stand for, but the concept of free speech is you even allow those that you hate or just despise to have a voice. That you can't just shut it down and say I don't like what you're saying, because if that becomes your standard, then everybody is going to be subject to the persecution based on who's in power. They can declare any kind of speech, like what we've been having today, can be considered antisocial or anti-Semitic, and therefore we're going to shut it down. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. The situation is hugely changing, Larry, considering I don't know if you saw the clip when Jimmy Kimmel was talking about Tucker Carlson being fired of Fox News. He was just attacking Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
the most violent way,
Yeah. Hey,
politically violent way possible.
And
but
then
that didn't happen with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah. Karma is a beautiful thing. As I say, I learned this saying in Argentina, el pez muere por la boca. The fish dies by its mouth. And, Kimmel, what people forget, Jimmy Kimmel used to be on one of the most sexist shows, where it was the Ben Stein show, and he was there with Adam. I guess they called it the Man Show. I think that's what it was called. I think it may still be on YouTube. Did you ever see it?
No.
Oh,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
No.
Go look up the Man Show. I mean, they were doing nothing but acting like a bunch of teenage boys, chasing women, drinking beer, being hellraisers. I mean, it was the antithesis of what he is now. I mean, good God, back then he was funny. Now he's just a screeching lecturer, hectoring people.
Yeah, but you don't see Tucker Carlson doing the same, because they know they understand the situation. They're so much aware of what's going on with the whole game.
Well, Tucker, to his credit, admits, I said some stupid things. I supported the war. I was a neocon. He's actually doing a lot of public self-confession and repentance. I think he genuinely feels bad for how he was such an enabler of so many bad things, and now he's trying to make amends for that. So, but that's the difference. He admits it. Kimmel doesn't.
Yeah. Larry, talking about this situation between Iran and Europe with the snapback sanctions, and it seems that still they're trying to do something politically. But how do you feel about the whole situation with the Trump administration? How do they feel about it? Do you think they're putting pressure even more on Europe with the case of snapback sanctions? And what is the outcome of that for the position of the West in terms of the way that they're trying to put pressure on Iran to get whatever they want to get from Iran?
So let's explain what we mean by snapback sanctions. Prior to the signing of the JCPOA, there were 6 or 7 different kinds of sanctions that had been imposed on Iran by the United Nations Security Council under that Joint Comprehensive Plan of Agreement, JCPOA. I think that's what the acronym means.
Yeah.
All those previous sanctions were supposed to be lifted. Iran was going to be under a new era of no sanctions in exchange for allowing inspections and ensuring that it wasn't building a nuclear weapon. Then the United States bailed out on it. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, who were also signatories, part of the JCPOA, They never actually lifted those previous sanctions that had been in place. They didn't lift those. So Iran was still actually suffering under the sanctions, even though under JCPOA they were supposed to be free of it. And then I guess Russia, ironically, was the one who had proposed this concept of snapback, naively believing, the Russians really are too trusting sometimes, I think. But they believed that this JCPOA thing would work, that because they were confident Iran was going to let them monitor. And so they never thought it would get to the point that Iran would say, hell no, we're not going to deal with this anymore. Because then the snapback was then any of those countries could say, okay, we're going to put all those sanctions back in place. Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is those sanctions never went away. So Iran was still operating under the sanctions. So a lot of this is just we're snapping back. What's important to note is the other day at the United Nations Security Council, Russia and China, along with Pakistan and Algeria, I believe, introduced a resolution saying, hey, let's keep the JCPOA sanctions relief in place. Because all of this is why Iran signed the Cairo agreement with IAEA 2 weeks ago. Because at the time I was saying, what the hell are they doing? They should tell IAEA to go to hell. But instead, they're signing this agreement to allow IAEA back in, who's the den of spies. But then I didn't think through and realize what they were doing. What Iran was doing is saying, okay, we're going to continue to cooperate as required by JCPOA, because we do genuinely want to have the sanctions relief. And in doing this, Iran took the high road of saying, okay, even though this international rules-based order is unfairly applied and never applied in a just manner with us, nonetheless, we're going to still play by those rules. And what did the West do? 9 members of the UN Security Council told Iran, go to hell, screw you. No, you're going to get the sanctions again. The sanctions, which have really never been lifted, were now going to be enforced, except then Russia and China came out together. First time. This is an illegal, invalid action, and we're going to do business with Iran any way we like and ignore your sanctions. So it's now a real break. Iran's in a stronger position, both militarily, economically, and politically now than it ever has been.
Do you feel that Iran, with this movement, Iran would move toward China and much more than before? Because Iran was somehow trying to, the new administration, the Pezeshkian administration, somehow was trying to get some sort of balance between the East and the West. They were trying to, many people within the administration, they were advocating for a better relationship with the United States, specifically with the United States.
Well, I think they now realize there's no possible relationship with the United States. The United States wants to destroy Iran. Iran, at the same time, has been very, active in strengthening relations with both China and Russia. There have been multiple military transports from both Russia and China going into Iran, helping them rebuild in the aftermath of the attacks on June 13th. So, what you're seeing here now is, in fact, the other day, the chief of staff of the Iranian army was in Moscow, and one of the meetings was with their Secretary of Energy, and the Secretary of Energy said to him, we look forward to in enhancing our economic and military cooperation. That was coming from a Russian energy chief. It's like, what do you have to do with military cooperation? So clearly, Iran they're getting ready to be attacked again. That's going to take place, and I think it will be devastating for Israel and potentially the United States.
Hello,
Paul's
Paul.
here.
Hello, Larry. Hello,
How you
Nima.
How's it go? Go ahead, Paul. Larry was talking about the snapback sanctions that Europeans, together with the United States, trying to impose more sanctions as it was before JCPOA. And how do you see the outcome of the new policies? Instead of having a common ground to work with Iran, you force European to go after the plan of a snapback sanction, putting a lot of sanctions on Iran. How is that going to influence the policy of Iran in terms of moving toward the east, or somehow trying to accommodate, trying to get closer to the west? Your take on that?
Well, I agree with Larry. I think Larry nailed it. It forces Iran to develop closer relations with the other two superpowers, Russia and China. And I agree with Larry. Larry's right. My own view is that he's also right. I think I understood Larry to say that there's not going to be possible for Iran to reach an accommodation with the United States. And I agree with that. I don't know what I missed, what his reason for that is, but I certainly agree with it. And I think the reason is that the government of the United States is a two-bit puppet government of Netanyahu. That's all it is. There's no independence anywhere in the United States government from Israel. They control both houses. They control the presidency and the media. The foreign policy's in their hands. So whatever happens to Iran will be determined by Netanyahu.
Let me ask you a question, Paul. That one of the people that reads my Sonar 21 sent this to me, and I hadn't really thought about it. But he said that given the price level of oil that's needed in order to sustain fracking in the United States, that the price of oil needs to be up at a certain level, and that perhaps what Trump's really doing is trying to provoke this crisis with Iran in order to actually get the price of oil up so that he can protect these industries inside the United States. Do you think that's pretty far-fetched?
No, that's entirely a possible motive. But I just don't think American foreign policy is that independent.
Yeah.
As good a motive as it is, the controlling element is Netanyahu. It's Israel, and so I really don't think we're capable of acting in our interest in the Middle East.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to bail out now. You gentlemen have a great conversation. Good to see everybody.
Great to talk to you, Larry.
All right, my friends. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Paul, how's it going?
Great.
Yeah. Paul, let's start with the case of Charlie Kirk. And what's your feeling? What's your understanding? You look at the assassination, you look at the guy that they're talking about, Taylor Robinson. He's coming from a conservative family. Then he's engaged in a relationship with a transgender guy. And it's the whole story is somehow amazing. The text messages between the two is somehow people from your age talking and in their 22, and they're talking to each other. What's going on? What do you make out of what's going on with the case of Charlie Kirk? You see Tucker Carlson coming out that he says what has happened to Charlie Kirk is much deeper than what we've been told by the administration. And Donald Trump coming out that it was this guy, he assassinated, there is no link beyond that. You're taking that.
Well, I agree with you, Nima. The official story we're getting is nonsense. It's impossible. And it bears no relationship to any fact. Remember now, they arrested this Robinson guy. What's his first name?
Taylor.
Tyler Robinson. Yeah, Tyler. Okay, they arrested him with no evidence. They had no evidence. They claim the rifle out in the woods was his. As far as we know, it was planted. But the reason I say they had no evidence is they didn't have a bullet. And if you don't have a bullet, you can't use the rifle to find the markings it makes on a bullet to find out if the bullet that allegedly was used to kill Charlie Kirk was fired from that rifle. And so they arrested him with no evidence. They had no evidence. There was no evidence because they didn't have a bullet. Now, this bullet story is really peculiar because I kept seeing that they were looking for the bullet. They hadn't found the bullet. And now the story came out the last day or two that, the surgeon found the bullet. It was still under the skin in Charlie Kirk's neck. There was no exit wound. In other words, it took them several days to discover there was no exit wound. I mean, really. And we had this report allegedly from the surgeon via Charlie Kirk's right-hand man in the organization that Charlie Kirk was in such extraordinary health that he was a man of steel, and that the bone mass stopped the bullet from exiting. Well, now this is another preposterous story. What's the bone mass in your neck? There's no bone mass. There's a little bit connects the head to the spinal cord. If this was a .306 round, which they say that is a caliber for large animals, grizzly bears, moose, it'd blow a man's head off. It would decapitate him. And it's stuck in his neck. Well, the first reports didn't say that the surgeon had found the bullet. He just said, hey, there's no exit wound. This makes no sense. A .30-06 isn't going to be stopped by a person's neck. But the later reports, he's got the bullet. Well, I'd like to know what caliber it is. It's impossible that it's a .30-06 unless it was in some amazing way defective. So the whole story stinks. Now, there is available now on the internet a very clear video of a man standing right in front of Charlie Kirk, just a few feet away. There's a railing between them, but I think you could actually reach over and touch him. And you get a clear picture of the man. You know what he looks like. As far as I can tell, there's no effort made to locate this person, to identify him, or to question him. But if you watch this video, I posted it this morning at the end of my column. It shows, or it appears to show, that this man assassinated Kirk with what's known as a palm pistol. This little thing that fits in your hand. And you can see him. He's standing kind of sideways. And at the right moment, he raises this arm up and this hand goes here. And as soon as you see the bullet hit Kirk, you see his hand, not much, but just a little from the recoil. And then he hops over the fence and rushes to Charlie's aid, which is a good way to escape. He's one of the people aiding the shot Kirk. Well, this should get plenty of attention. This, in fact, it looks to me like you can even see the pistol barrel in between his fingers. Now, with just a little bit of recoil, it shows it's clearly not a .308. His hand would come back and slapped him in the face. I know all about high-powered rifles. So what was it? 17 caliber, 22 caliber, 25 at the most. It wasn't a high-powered rifle round. So, and then I see there was a report from some other surgeon who hasn't seen it, who's not doing the exploration of Charlie, but he says the trajectory doesn't, the trajectory of the bullet doesn't match the theory that it came from a roof. So we have all of this. What is it? What does it tell us? Well, it tells us that you went away for a minute. It tells us that the control narrative is having trouble. There's a lot of trouble with this control narrative, but they're having some success because the fact that the surgeon says that Charlie Kirk's bone mass stopped the bullet, now all Charlie's Christian supporters are thanking God for the miracle of Charlie's strength, which prevented the people standing behind him from being hit by the bullet going through and hitting them. And so, in other words, everything's off focus. The narrative controllers they've even got Charlie Kirk supporters off focus, talking about the miracle, God's miracle of Charlie's bone mass. And you can see where that'll go. And then we see the narrative controllers getting the rest of us all focused, talking about transgendered roommates and hidden messages of Tyler Robinson admitting his confession. In other words, there's no confession, but the media is creating the impression that there is one, a hidden message, that it, and the media said, and it appears like Tyler Robinson might have confessed online. So the confession appears like, or is hidden. So they've been given, these stories are being planted on them by whoever handled this assassination. It fits the pattern that we see over and over. It fits the pattern that James Jesus Angleton told me about. So my view is until somebody can explain how a human neck stopped 30-06 from having an exit wound, and somebody can prove that the bullet that they took from Charlie's neck, apparently, was fired from that rifle, I don't believe a word of it. Not a word. And I think that, I think we discussed this before, maybe not. The two elements, the two entities that had the strongest motive was the American establishment. Why? Because here's a rising leader they don't control. He doesn't talk the language. He's talking the family, God, Christianity. He's talking all the things that they've been busy getting rid of for years. So they have a very good motive, the same reason they got rid of Martin Luther King. He was a rising leader. They didn't control him. The ruling establishment will not tolerate a leader they can't control. Look what they tried to do to Trump. 8 years, 4 false indictments, how many false civil suits, constant propaganda, Russiagate, Documents Gate, Insurrection Gate, Stripper Gate. It was endless. This is what they do to anyone they can't control. Now, what is the other entity that had the strong motive? Israel. Why? Why? Because apparently in the beginning, like any American conservative, Charlie Kirk was aligned with Israel. Americans have been aligned with Israel since the beginning of the Cold War. They're also aligned because of this myth of the Judeo-Christian ethic, which doesn't exist. It's a hoax. But Christian conservatives are just accustomed to being aligned with Israel. Well, they were our ally in the Cold War against Russian influence in the Middle East and our ability to control the oil flows, all of that. So conservatives don't even think about it. They're just automatically in Israel's camp. Well, Charlie Kirk was like that. And then he started noticing things like he noticed elsewhere. And he started raising issues. And toward the end, he was being quite critical of Israel. Well, if Netanyahu sees this, he says, well, look, this is the leader of the rising generation. And he's leading the rising generation. That's going to be the future leaders out of Israel's camp. We have to get rid of him. So that's my take on it all. They're two different entities, both powerful, both capable of assassinating whoever they want to assassinate. Both had strong motives to assassinate him. The official narrative makes no sense. They arrest Tyler Robinson before they have any evidence. They don't even have the bullet. If you don't have the bullet, you can't prove it came from the gun that they say is his. And as of yesterday, my search, I couldn't find anywhere that this Tyler Robinson had confessed. I saw one post that allegedly has Tyler Robinson saying they don't have a case against me. They haven't proved their case. I agree with him. What is the case? He's arrested and blamed before there's any link between the bullet and the gun. And we still don't know what the link is between him and the gun. We don't know what that link is. So that's my take on it. This is a professional political assassination to get rid of somebody who is disturbing the situation.
Yeah, many people are questioning, Paul, the way that Netanyahu was reacting to the assassination, and he came out 2 or 3 days ago on his personal YouTube channel and telling everybody that it wasn't us, we didn't do anything, we didn't assassinate Charlie Kirk. Why is he feeling the way that he's feeling, he's feeling somehow the need to put out such a video, in your opinion?
Because Israel had such a strong motive. The first thing that Netanyahu did was to say what a terrible thing that Charlie Kirk has been killed, that he was our friend. We were closely aligned. He was with Israel. That's what he was stressing. That was he wasn't stressing at first, we didn't do it. He was saying, Kirk was our close friend. We were closely allied. He was a man of Israel. He was trying to offset any impact Kirk had on the rising youth about, hey, maybe there's a problem with Israel. So that's the first thing he did. To me, that's telltale. And but you see, we're not going to find out, Nima. If Israel did it, there'll never be any official confirmation of that. And if it was an inside job of the American establishment, there'll never be any confirmation. The real question is whether this Tyler Robinson will get assassinated inside a suicide-proof jail cell with all the cameras turned off and the guards nowhere to be found, so they can declare the case closed because it's so full of holes. It's just it'll be very difficult for them now to come up with a new narrative because the old one is completely shot to pieces. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know what they're going to do. I suspect what I said, Jack Ruby will be led into the jail and shoot him.
Paul, what has happened to Charlie Kirk, in my opinion, is some sort of influence that the public opinion among the young people in the United States had on him to change his mindset toward Israel. It seems that in the aftermath of his assassination, the Israeli lobby, or what we've seen with Ben Shapiro and these people who are supporting Israel in what they're doing in Gaza, in the Middle East, they're trying to take over the movement, they're trying to reshape it. But after all, it's not. Do you think they're going to be capable of doing this? Because this movement came to Charlie, not Charlie didn't move toward this movement. The people who Charlie was talking with, they changed his mindset toward Israel. It wasn't Charlie influencing them. And these people were mostly conservative, from conservative families, who were criticizing the policy of the United States somehow. Because
That's rare, Nemo. The conservatives have all been. I've never known a conservative who wasn't in Israel's pocket. I'm sure there's a basis for what you're saying. I hadn't thought of that. But I find it surprising, just thinking about all the years I was in Washington, the whole Cold War period, the conservatives were in Israel's pocket. And everything I've seen since, they're in Israel's pocket. The Republicans are totally aligned with Israel. It's only the Democrats, or some of the Democrats, that have been critical. And the reason is the Democrats are the champions of the immigrant invaders, and there are now so many Muslims in the United States. They're now Muslim mayors and Muslim district attorneys and Muslim members of the Congress. So the Democrats have had to sort of accept some criticism of Israel, but the Republicans, they don't accept it. And there's really not what I would consider a conservative press any longer in America. It was taken over several decades ago by 30 years ago by the neoconservatives, along with the conservative foundations. So what you said surprises me. But to get to your question, usually when a movement loses its leader, it struggles. That's a huge blow. If you think about it, James O'Keefe, when he was the head of Project Veritas, it was a very effective organization. They threw him out because he was too effective. Somebody got to his trustees. Well, what do you hear of Project Veritas today? Nothing. What about Glenn Greenwald? First he gets bumped out of the press and TV media. And then he forms up The Intercept. And it's too effective. So he gets thrown out of that. Well, what have you heard of The Intercept? Disappeared. The kind of hard-hitting, analytical reporting that Glenn Greenwald was doing, that disappeared from The Intercept. Just like Project Veritas became nothing once they threw out James O'Keefe. So when you lose your leader, I think that's a very serious blow. I mean, you can see it. Look at the effect of the Israeli assassinations on Hezbollah. I mean, Hezbollah is nothing like the force it was prior to Israel removing so many leaders. The same could be said for Iran. I don't know. You would know more about that than me. But Israel assassinated so many Iranian top leaders and scientists that it has to have had an effect on Iran. So I don't know what fate the Charlie Kirk organization will have. They may try to carry it on. It may just become some sort of reformation of evangelical stance. The whole evangelical stance could possibly be less pro-Israel, or it could be more pro-Israel. It really depends on where the money comes from. If it comes from the Israelis, the Israel lobby, then it'll become an Israeli organization. You see, what the organization, I think, will be mainly concerned with is existence and preaching Christian values. And it will be removed from foreign policy discussions unless that's a requirement for Israeli funding.
Paul, what's your take on the way that Saudi Arabia has decided to have a sort of alliance with Pakistan and military alliance with Pakistan, a defense treaty between the two countries? One of them is has nuclear missiles, nuclear bombs, and the other one is seeking for some sort of umbrella, some sort of security, nuclear security, nuclear capable state being able to help them in terms of the threat that they're feeling. In my opinion, what's going on in the mind of these people in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, UAE, they would ask themselves, if Israel attacks us with nuclear bombs, what can we do to Israel? The United States definitely would not help us in that sort of attack to defend us. They're not going to defend us. So we should do something about it. That's why they're talking with Pakistan. They're trying to get a better relationship with Iran. Your understanding on that?
Well, it's obvious. The Saudis want to be included in Pakistan's umbrella, nuclear umbrella. It's the Pakistani nuclear weapons that are attractive. Now, why has this come about? Because, Greater Israel traditionally is from the Nile to the Euphrates. That was the definition of Greater Israel. That is the territory that the Zionists claim is Israel. In other words, it includes half of Iraq and Syria and other elements. But in the last year, Israel first expanded Greater Israel to include 1/2 of Saudi Arabia. So all of a sudden, Greater Israel doesn't stop at the Euphrates, which, if I remember my geography, kind of splits Iraq in half. It now goes into half of Saudi Arabia. And then more recently, Israel announced that, in fact, it was Netanyahu. He said that Greater Israel now includes Pakistan. Well, if Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are included in Greater Israel, then they're targets to be destroyed, just like Libya was destroyed and Iraq was destroyed and Syria was destroyed and Palestine is, they got to go. And so when these two countries, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, find themselves included in Greater Israel, they say, okay, that's the target on our back. We know the Americans are just 2-bit punk puppets of Netanyahu and Israel, and they're going to destroy us. So that's why they come together. You see, what's always puzzled me is this should have been obvious to Pakistan and Saudi Arabia 20 years ago. It's taken them 20 years to recognize the obvious. That whole part of the world is so slow in just seeing the obvious. And so they've been knocked off one by one. If they had been unified, Israel would have gotten nowhere. But they can't accept reality, or they can't see it, or they're just focused somewhere else. I don't know, but clearly they have not been focused on their survival because they haven't survived. So it could be now that Israel has brought home to Saudi Arabia and to Pakistan, hey, you're now part of Great Israel. And so they said, ooh, what are we going to do about this? So they're going to get unified. And Pakistan's valuable to Saudi Arabia because Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Now, if China and Russia had any sense, and Iran, they would announce a mutual defense treaty and include Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And then the word goes out to Israel and the United States, okay, you attack them, you attack us, and we're going to attack you. And then it stops. But since Russia and China and Iran have zero vision, can't see beyond the end of their nose, nothing will happen. They seem to be determined to be destroyed one by one. And they will be.
Paul, what do you make of Donald Trump asking Afghanistan to let the United States go again in Afghanistan and get the airbase, Bagram Air Base, which Donald Trump is claiming that it was the United States who built the airbase, which wasn't, and it was the Soviet Union in 1950s. They built the airbase. What is he trying? He said that he's concerned about China and China's activities in the region. But how do you see beyond that? Is it Iran, Pakistan, Russia, China, all of them together? What is
Okay,
that?
Damon, I'll tell you, first of all, I don't think Donald Trump is any longer in control of his foreign policy. And I think the military security complex has resumed control, and the military or elements of it are very disappointed in the way we withdrew. It was a humiliating thing, kind of like Vietnam. And the military security complex wants more conflicts because it wants more markets for its weapons. And so this is the American military security complex and the elements in the armed forces that are very unhappy at the way we withdrew, working together to get the war going. War is what feeds the profits and feeds the careers. If there's war, the promotions come much faster. They're much faster promotions. If it's not war, your prospects of moving up are limited and very slow. And of course, if there's no war, you have a limit on the weapons that you can get financed and sold. And so that's what's going on. Trump is learning that the president doesn't really control the government, which is what I've said for a long time. It was my experience when I was high up in the Reagan administration. It's very difficult for a president to control anything because the main use of government, the main function of government is to serve private interests. And so even the president's own appointees are serving those private interests, so they will have careers when that administration is over. So assistant secretaries, undersecretaries, cabinet secretaries, they're looking ahead. What happens to me when this guy's gone? What if I make the wrong enemies? My crew is over. What if I make the right friends? I'll prosper and go on and rise and be paid more and more and more. So this is the real incentive. And so it's difficult for a government to do what the president's agenda is, unless the agenda magically serves all the private interests. Well, of course, any kind of reform agenda doesn't. Any kind of peace agenda doesn't. So this is what Trump's up against. And I think that we now see he's no longer in control of foreign policy. And this is why his statements are always turning around. He says one thing, and then a little bit later, he's contradicted it. Because what he says isn't what they're doing. And they're not going to adjust to him. He has to adjust to them. So that's my explanation. It's what I experienced. And I think there's been a lot of people who have seen it by being part of it, who are honest enough to say that's really what the situation is.
Paul, before wrapping up, what is the situation with the conflict in Ukraine? Donald Trump is talking about sending more weapons, 6 billion, and to Ukraine, and on the other hand, he feels, or he somehow shows us that he wants to do something about the conflict in Ukraine. What is that position? Do you feel the same way as it was about the Middle East, or the Russian, the negotiations, the talks behind the scene are getting somewhere?
Well, again, the military security complex doesn't want the conflict to end. It means the profits end. It means they have to cut back. Executives wonder who will be cut, me or this guy. So he has to send the weapons. I think Trump, I think we talked about this before. I think Trump was trying to get out of the war directly, and instead of having the American taxpayer fund the supply of weapons to Ukraine, he wanted to sell the weapons to the Europeans who would buy them and give them to the Ukrainians. And that would keep the profits going for the American armaments industry. It would be a way for Trump to get us out of directly participating in the war without hurting their profits. And therefore, it was a way that he could exit without making himself vulnerable to the military security complex, without annoying them by closing down their one of their profit avenues. And then he could prepare for his war against Iran, which I'm fairly certain Netanyahu will lead him into. I don't quite see how he's going to avoid it. You see, if you notice, Trump always adjusts to Netanyahu. Remember when just the other day when Netanyahu and the Israelis attacked the Houthis that were in Qatar, the little Arab oil emirate. And they didn't succeed, but they killed some of the local citizens. Well, all the
You're
reports
talking about
said
Hamas leaders.
it was Hamas. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was thinking it was the Houthis. It was the Hamas.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hamas. Yeah.
they tried to kill the Hamas leaders, and they killed other people instead. Well, this was an act of aggression of Israel against a sovereign country. And the initial reports said that Israel had attacked without clearing it with Trump. So these were all initial reports. So this showed to me that Israel was more and more confident. It didn't even have to clear in advance what it's going to do with the United States. And then later, I saw a claim that, well, Trump says Israel had spoke to him and he had cleared it. Well, which is true? And did Trump have to say this because it made him look like that now you didn't pay any attention to him anymore? Initially, the reports were that Trump was mad at Netanyahu and upset with him for doing this. Because, we have this great big air base in that little Arab oil kingdom. And so they're supposed to be part of our position in the Middle East, and Israel's attacking it, attacking our ally, Trump's ally, where our air base is. Well, you can see why Trump had to, once he thought about this, say, oh, yes, I gave approval. So, well, I think it's pathetic that the United States is such a weak, powder puff type of country that it can't even have its own foreign policy. It has to accept the foreign policy that Israel imposes on it. And so I discount the notion that the United States is a superpower. It's an Israeli puppet state. That's all it is. You can't, we've talked about it before, I think. Even in red states, you can't criticize Israel and have a government contract or government employment. I mean, even Texas, now imagine Texans, tough Texans, and their Republican government won't let them say a critical word about Israel without being banned from doing business with the state. Well, this shows you who's in control. And look at the universities. If our elite universities, Harvard, if the students go protest the genocide that Israel's inflicting on the Palestinians, they get expelled from school. They can't even wave a Palestinian flag. That's considered a hate crime. If the students protesting are foreign, Trump deports them. Well, do we do this for any other country? No. No. Do we do this to the left-wing kids that burn American flags and cheer Charlie Kirk's death and encourage assassinations of Trump? No, we don't. We don't do this. So that kind of tells me that the Middle East, what happens there is mainly in Netanyahu's hands. And Putin and Russia and the Chinese, they just seem to be afraid to get involved. I mean, look, Putin ran away from Assad in Syria. after spending several years defending Syria, ran away, handed it over to Israel. Now Israel's occupying southern Syria, I think, all the way to city limits of Damascus. And they say we're here to stay. So I would say if you want to know what's going to happen, ask Netanyahu. He's the one who knows.
Yeah. That. Thank you so much, Paul, for
Okay,
being with
Naaman.
us today. Great work, as always.
Thank you, Naaman.
See you soon, Paul. Bye-bye.
Send me the URL.
I'm going to send it right away.